Hello, everyone. My name is James Nicholas, Senior Product Marketing Manager at BioCatch, and today's LinkedIn Live will be on the topic of AML, mule accounts, and technology to help. I'm joined with two BioCatch team members, Kevin Donovan and Benny Ankri. Can you guys please introduce yourselves?
Hi, folks. I'm Kevin Donovan, Vice President of New Products at BioCatch. I've been in the fraud and authentication space for about 20 plus years. And today I work with BioCatch customers on new product initiatives.
Hi, my name is Benny. I'm a senior product manager at BioCatch. I've been in BioCatch for 2 years, and I've been in the cybersecurity industry for the last 15 years.
Perfect. So before we get started, please remember to post any questions you have in the chat so we can get back to you. And with that, let's jump right into it. The first question I have is for Kevin around the current state of money laundering in the banking and financial industry. What do you think some of the top problems banks and FIs face on this topic?
Thanks, James. So to begin, it's really an exciting time around mules and money laundering. I think the biggest challenge that banks face today is the magnitude of the problem, right? So if I look at the role that mules have played with money laundering, it's a much bigger problem than I think the banks have realized, and that's becoming quite visible today. So the ability to kind of detect mules and to operationalize how we're going to remove mules from the bank, so going a bit from the defensive stance to the offensive stance, is really transforming the industry. So it's a really exciting time around the state of money laundering.
So on a similar note, for both Benny and Kevin, how have money laundering bad actors evolved over the years? And do you think fraud and AML departments are keeping up?
So I think that they've become very organized, the mule activities, and the mules industry. It became an industry, right? I mean, there's a very, as we see it, it looks like a very pyramid where there is the walls of the walls, there is the management level, and there is the mules themselves. And it's an operation, right? I mean, there are people that are recruiting mules out there actively right now as we speak. They are recruiting young people. They're recruiting people that they need for money. It became a very large kind of activities out there. So Kevin mentioned the magnitude is very large. It's very big. We see that on social networking. We are following different channels and different activities that are happening out there, and we see them acting out there. Not even in the dark web, out there in the wild, trying to recruit people, because a lot of the technology allows you today to be hidden behind your computer or your mobile phone. So with the different apps that are out there in social media, it's easier for that to grow.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I think these bad actors, they leverage the ability to leverage technology and how banks are also organizing their applications. So if you think of the account onboarding process in many countries, we're trying to make it as easy as possible to acquire new users. The bad actors can exploit this, right? So that's certainly an area. As Benny said, social networking, the ability to recruit and to acquire new mules has also been very powerful. So really just the ability for these bad actors to leverage the technology and the approaches that we take has transformed that industry.
So do you think AML departments are keeping up? Fraud departments as well?
I believe I think AML, yes. So AML is much more than just mules. In the case of fraud has a very full plate, right? So it's not just mules, but they also have first-party fraud, third-party fraud. They have bots and social. They have just so many different attacks. The fact that now mule is a part of their plate is transforming how they're looking at this. So I don't know if mules has been something that they've proactively gone after until probably the past I would say 12 months, right? This has changed, and we'll talk a little bit about PSR and some of the regulation that's coming. But I think for the first time, mules has become kind of taken center stage, as a key part to the overall fraud landscape, and banks are now starting to do something proactively about this.
Got it. So speaking of being proactive, my next question is for Benny. On the topic of mule accounts going unnoticed, how important is it to proactively detect these fraudsters before the money is moved? And what are some of the problems existing technologies face?
So thank you, James. I think that's a great question. For years, there was usage in commodity solutions of transactional monitoring. That was the way to monitor the activity of the mules, monitor the inbound payments and the outbound payments. Nowadays, with the technology of the behavioral biometrics, we can detect a lot more. So for the fact, what we are seeing on our numbers, we are able to detect 99% of the mules, the mules that we are detecting, 99% of them, we are detecting them before the bank. And not just that, out of this 99%, 70% of them we are detecting prior of the money getting into the account and ready to move to the mule account. And that's super important, and I will explain why. And it's mostly because of the operational cost for the bank. So we know that it can take up to 2 years of investigation from the bank perspective to investigate an activity of a mule where money left the bank or money came in. There's a lot of workforce around it. If the banks are able to detect that much earlier, they can save a lot of human resources and labor in the perspective of the mules activities. And that's what we do with the behavioral biometrics. We can detect, and we are detecting today already with our dedicated model for mules activities, the fact that the account is going to be a mule, or the fact that money came in and it's gonna leave the account soon enough. So we are able to alert the bank much earlier than the time that they were supposed to work on that, which would have taken them, as I mentioned, maybe even 2 years.
Interesting. And what are your thoughts, Kevin, on some of the new regulations such as PSR that are shifting the liability between the banks?
Yeah, I think PSR is certainly the most visible, but there are many other countries that are increasing the communication with their banks on how they're going to handle liability. I think it's a major step forward. Insofar as this is really the first time where we start to connect scam activity with money mules, right? So from a strategic standpoint, we're now looking at the complete puzzle instead of just kind of these one areas. So I think this has a really big impact on how banks are looking at their level of detection, not only from the scam standpoint, but also where the money is going. So if you look at mules and money laundering, I think it's really the logistics of how these bad actor networks behave. So the fact now that we're looking at, it's not just the responsibility of the bank where a scam occurs, but to the bank that's actually receiving the stolen money, and bringing visibility and accountability to that is potentially transformative.
So now that we've discussed the many problems banks and FIs are facing around money laundering and mule accounts, let's talk about how BioCatch can help. This question is for both Benny and Kevin. How has BioCatch partnered with our customers to create our mule account detection solution? Kevin, please kick it off.
Yeah, so I'll let Benny talk about how the model is created together with the customers. From my perspective, I think there are two primary areas that we're collaborating with our banks very closely and around mule detection. The first is the operationalizing of mule detection. So as Benny talked about, with behavior biometrics, we can detect the mule before they start their transaction. So it's a bit of kind of pre-crime, the old Tom Cruise Minority Report, right? So it's something that hasn't happened yet. So we have a bit of a window into the future, and how we operationalize that is it's kind of a new paradigm. So that's becoming very important. So do we quarantine these accounts, and how do we look at that, and how do we investigate this, and so forth? So these are kind of new activities that we're working together with our bank, and it requires a good collaboration between the fraud teams, the AML teams, and then BioCatch. So that's one area. The second area, which I'm particularly I'm really committed to, is going beyond just mules and money laundering detection into what else is connected to this. So if you think of things like terrorist financing, modern slavery, human trafficking, child exploitation, they're connected to mules. So we're working more with financial crimes organizations within the bank to proactively use behavior biometrics together with mule detection to identify these more nefarious types of rings. So moving beyond just scams and money into really, kind of the human element of what we do. And this is really an important, I think, collaboration that we're having together with our banks.
So to complete what Kevin just said, so we have our mule model that uses hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of features looking at the behavioral activity of the users. Using machine learning for all of those features, we are able to provide sort of certainty with different kind of levels that we have with regards on how risky is the mule that we are looking at. And we are feeding that into the banks, and the banks are actually confirming that or denying that. Like I said, 99%, at least what we have brought so far, they were able to confirm, they were able to tell us that it was detected prior to the other system that is implemented. So behavioral biometrics, it's a big thing. It's a big change in the industry. I know it's been a while that it's being used, but now with the mules operation, we see that it have a lot of great benefits.
Well, and it works, right? And I think most importantly, this is innovation that scales and works, right? So,
yeah, and I think a lot of people will tell you that machine learning, AI, these are very cool slogans, very nice slogans, and a lot of companies likes to use them, but we actually utilize them, and we really use them.
So at a larger scale, Kevin, how can identifying and stopping mule accounts be transformative for the banking industry?
So I've been at BioCatch, I'll be coming up on 8 years and gone through multiple product iterations and news. So BioCatch is certainly, we're a very transformative company. So we're always working on kind of new problems. I think mule detection and what we're doing around mule detection is the most transformative, or will be the most transformative. And the reason I think that is several reasons. The first is, if I look at the traditional problems that we're solving, so think of account opening fraud or account takeover or scams, these are individual events. Right? So if we detect a scam that's occurring, or if an account is being compromised, these are kind of one-to-one ratios. In the case of mules, these aren't just individual mules, they're connected to a larger clusters and a larger universe, right? This is really the criminal underground that exists within our existing banking clients, right? So it's kind of this invisible and very dark area of banking. So it's not a one-to-one ratio that one mule is connected to a broader network. So that's very much a different way of thinking and potentially kind of working together with their bank. That's the first part. The second thing that I think is really transformative is there's a number of scam activities that are extremely difficult to detect. So these are cases where the genuine user is tricked into doing something. So think of a business email compromise, romance scam, imposter scams. I mean, there's so many different types of scams that are extremely difficult to detect because the genuine user is coerced into doing that. So the ability to identify these clusters when money is being moved into something that is either linked to a known bad actor network, it's another potentially powerful signal to prevent real harm that's being done to these victims. Because many times, in the case of scams, this money is not reimbursed. So it can really destroy lives, right? So when we've heard that from customers. We've heard that from people. So the fact that we have the opportunity to provide another signal that can be preventive and stopping some of these scams to occur is really a potentially big win for all of us.
And Benny, as Kevin kind of brought up briefly before on the topic of networks, are there any specific technologies on our roadmap that you would like to tease and bring up?
So yes, James, actually we have the two new interesting features or products that we are working on. One of them is the link analysis, which creates a brighter picture to the bank analysts. It really elaborates the problem that the bank have, and it really helps to focus on the riskiest mules, and it really helps to actually finding the mules that you would like to address first, and showing the payments of the mules or showing the connection between one device to another really puts up directly into the analyst kind of consciousness, the understanding that there is something that is wrong here, and that's much stronger than just looking at a table that have a result of a mule or a 0 or 1 or any other indication that different products are giving. I mean, it's very helpful, but it's much more helpful when you're actually visualizing that. So that's from the perspective of the link analysis, which I think is extremely important in the any mule solution. And from the inbound activity perspective, that adds additional layer that also strengthens the behavioral piece, because that's eventually, when you think of it, an inbound transactions have an aspect of behavioral as well. When someone sends the money to you, that's a behavior of the other side, and that can help us to identify the mules from outside of the banks as well.
Thanks for that, Benny. So, Kevin, going back to technologies that can be transformative for the industry, what are your thoughts on what we're working on for link analysis and how it can help?
Yeah, I think it's incredible. So some of the visuals that we've seen from the work that Benny has done, you'll have these cases of clusters or so that are connected to an individual user that maybe we don't have a particular behavioral profile or so, who is also connected to another ring. And the ability to see, if money is being sent to this ring, that these users and these devices are connected to something that's really, really bad, can have a huge impact. Again, going back to those cases of romance scams and so forth. So just a small little story. We had the Tinder swindler, which was a kind of famous case at our London Connect event. And one of the things that she had requested was, at the moment she started making these big payments, how it would have been helpful if there was some indication that she was sending money to something that was a known bad user. So again, if we have both sides of the equation and we can start to see that, maybe this person is being completely coerced and sending money, but this money is connected to a really bad network. This is potentially a powerful signal that can help, that we can help kind of bring back to these consumers, and again, potentially, save them from making a really horrible mistake.
Got it. And finally, my last question is for both of you on the topic of FRAML, fraud plus AML. What benefits do you see in the fusion of enterprise fraud management teams and anti-money laundering teams working together?
Yeah, I love this. So we're seeing this happen more and more because I think, again, what we're doing around mule detection and money laundering is innovative. So we're working with banks that are kind of innovating their structures, right? So we're seeing more collaboration between fraud and AML teams. Not always, but for the most part, there is kind of, I think, a natural connection between the tools because a mule and a money laundering ring are part of the same ecosystem, right? So they are connected. The benefits that I see are fraud teams are used to working with predictive tools. They're used to working with models. They're used to working with innovation. So the ability to adapt quickly and to adjust strategies is certainly an advantage. In the case of money laundering, they have a longer view. They have more resources from an investigation standpoint. They're connected to these other bad activities, whether it's terrorist financing or modern slavery and so forth. So it goes farther than just these kind of individual events. So the combination between the two, with the work that Benny and the team are doing, is really a potentially disruptive approach to work together to tackle this very large problem.
So for me, I'm very excited about that. The way that I see it is that fraud and mules, money laundering, they are all connected to one another. So from an end user perspective and from a user of the bank, for myself as well, I'm happy for that these two teams are starting to collaborate, because there is no mules without fraud. The money from fraud have to go to something. So there are a lot of more worse criminal activities that moves money into the mule accounts, but eventually money that comes from fraud also goes to mule accounts. So they are all connected, and only combining it and working in cooperation cooperatively, they will be able to fight that battle. So I'm very excited about it, and I think that's the right approach. We see that we literally see fraud and mules connected, and we mentioned that earlier with the bad actors. So mules are connected to everything. They're connected to scams, they're connected to BC, phishing attacks, and they're also connected to fraud. They're just another thing on the chain of that criminal activity and that bad actors industry.
Yeah, I think Benny said it perfectly. If there's one thing to remember from this session, it would be that. So I think, Benny, you captured that perfectly.
Thanks.
Perfect. So thank you, Benny. Thank you, Kevin. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And we're looking forward to bringing you more insights on fraud and AML in the future. Thanks and take care.
Thank you.